Stay interviews are designed to find out what's really important to your employees and what you can do as their manager to improve their experience at Spot On. Countless studies and surveys of terminated employees have proven time and time again that the immediate supervisor can help drive employee engagement and retention better than anyone else.
The learning objectives of this training include for each of you to become familiar with how engagement and retention impact productivity, how managers impact employee engagement and retention, how to conduct a stay interview and develop a stay plan that will improve engagement and retention for each of your employees, and finally, how to assess the risk of losing each of your employees with a simple tool that both quantifies the risk and provides information on how to address it. This survey by The Economist magazine confirms what we already know. Unemployment in the United States is at an all-time low, and companies are literally fighting a war for talent. That's causing total compensation and perks to rise while the pool of available talent is shrinking. Voluntary turnover has steadily rose over the past decade, and in October 2019, it was reported that the quit rate, or voluntary termination rate, has hit an 18-year high. And what's worse, most companies really don't know how to engage and retain the talent they have.
U.S. companies spend billions of dollars every year to try and improve employee engagement and retention, but corporate America overall hasn't been able to move the needle. The majority of U.S. employees are not engaged, and many are actively disengaged, meaning that they're negatively impacting other employees around them, including their productivity. Some are even actively undermining the work that managers do to maintain a positive culture and keep their employees engaged. When it comes to the actively disengaged, the lift in engagement that you would expect from being there for your employees and all of the things that we do organizationally, such as providing a free catered lunch once a week, a subsidized fitness center membership, a commuting benefit, and so on, is like taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Decades of research validates these two simple equations. Good programs plus good supervisors equal higher retention and engagement, and good programs plus poor supervisors equals turnover and disengagement. So what's a poor supervisor in this context? It's simply a supervisor who doesn't have the tools or the knowledge to effectively engage and retain their employees, which today is a key leadership competency. When managers know how to engage in a conversation that gets at the root cause of an employee's discontent at work and then diligently focuses on helping to turn that around, there is abundant data that indicates that a manager can build a really strong relationship that helps ensure employees won't leave for, say, an extra $1 per hour or a little shorter commute. We all know there's a cost in terms of time and effort to backfill a role, but did you ever try to put a price on it? In terms of job postings, salaries for recruiters, and others involved in the hiring process, as well as lost productivity and lost opportunity costs, it's very expensive. Here's a few more statistics from studies conducted by some of the world's best known subject matter experts that all point to how vital engagement is in our tight labor market. Gallup found that engaged employees account for about 22% more profitability and lower turnover. The Great Places to Work Institute found that engaged employees account for 20% more productivity and lower turnover. And Hewitt concluded that the percent of engaged employees correlates with higher shareholder returns. The impact on productivity and profitability clearly suggest that engagement and retention are business imperatives and not just nice to have. Here's a few statistics from literally hundreds available on the direct impact that managers have on engagement. Employee engagement levels are higher when their supervisors had higher levels of engagement. Most employees take their cues from their manager, and they're only as engaged as their manager. When employees stay, it's because of their immediate manager, more so than any other factor. And employees who stay primarily for their supervisors will stay longer, perform better, and are more satisfied with their pay. And when it comes to pay, a survey conducted by the Saratoga Institute showed that 88% of all employees who recently resigned said that they left for a reason other than pay. That same survey also said that an unhappy employee will bolt for a 5% salary increase, but it would take a 20% bump for a satisfied employee to jump ship. If you think about the wage of many of your employees, a 5% increase would amount to about $1 an hour, give or take. One of the most powerful benefits of conducting state interviews is that you get valuable information that you can use now while employees are still here. Human Resources receives a lot of information during exit interviews, but by that time it's generally too late to do anything to retain the employees. Here's some of the most common feedback that we receive. If the managers would have known of the concerns before they left, they may have been able to retain them.
My manager never has time for me.
Nobody is held accountable for anything.
I have no work-life balance.
I have no real growth opportunities.
There's no real direction.
I'm very frustrated with my job right now.
My manager never asks how things are going.
So why stay if I don't feel supported?
Hundreds of surveys and studies point to one thing. It's not what we give employees, it's how we treat them, how we engage them. And each of you is the primary driver of that. The state interview builds trust, and trust is the cement that binds strong relationships. Without it, relationships fall apart. Plenty of studies have also found that engagement is the default for the vast majority of employees. The average employee arrives on day one ready to do their best and make a difference. But over time, managers and organizations sometimes do something that causes employees to disengage. State interviews will help you find out what those things are. The Rethinking Retention model, developed by C-Suite Analytics, breaks out the steps that leaders need to take to engage and retain employees. At the foundation of the Rethinking Retention model is the understanding that companies need to think of retention like they would any other critical business process and build a system of processes to manage retention with the same sense of urgency and importance to achieve optimal business outcomes. C-Suite Analytics CEO Dick Finnegan is a world-renowned expert on the subject, best-selling author, and the pioneer of the modern state interview process. And most of what we'll learn today is from his exhaustive research. The model says that companies must implement strategies that build upon these three principles. Employees quit jobs because they can, for any reason or for no reason at all. Employees stay for things that they get uniquely from their supervisor. And supervisors build unique relationships that drive retention or negatively impact it. The state interview is designed around these three principles. A key goal of state interviews is to show employees that you care about them as individuals, which will strengthen the bond of trust. A state interview is a structured discussion with each employee focused on engagement and retention. They bring information that can be used by managers today versus getting the feedback via HR after they've resigned. They focus on individual employees, and they place managers in the solution seat. So managers become the problem solvers, the ones who demonstrate their interest in improving employee experience. State interviews empower frontline managers who have the biggest stake in engaging and retaining their employees. And by the way, every manager should participate in a state interview with their leader before conducting them with their employees. Before releasing this book, Dick Finnegan researched the most effective questions that his clients were asking employees in state interviews, and these are the top 5. These 5 questions, referred to as the SI5, when followed up with probing questions, should yield the information you need to develop a stay plan for each of your employees. A stay plan is really just an action plan that addresses their concerns or aspirations. The 5 highly researched questions are: when you come to work each day, what things do you look forward to? What are you learning here? Why do you stay here? When was the last time you thought about leaving our team and what prompted it? And what can I do to make your experience at work better for you? Management guru Stephen Covey, in The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, said that when we set out to achieve a desired result, we envision the end result that we want. We begin with the end in mind. which is, in this case, improved employee engagement and retention. Stay interviews are a process that includes skills, schedule, plans, and forecasting retention risk, and all of them are important for achieving the end result. We're going to cover each of these in this course. The book entitled The Stay Interview, which is Dick's follow-up to The Power of Stay Interviews, includes lots of tips for conducting successful interviews that really drive engagement and retention. And most of what we'll discuss today comes directly from that book, with Dick's permission. Stay interviews reinforce good relationships, build new ones, and help reverse the wear and tear that relationships can incur over time. They're built on the premise that leaders need to own their talent, that is, be accountable for their levels of engagement. Stay interviews reveal what is really important to employees, and they should be viewed as a management priority conducted on a specific schedule with follow-ups to ensure that stay plans are carried out, and not just a check-the-box activity. There's 4 skills that every manager needs for a successful interview. These skills include listening, not just hearing, taking notes, probing for more information, and taking responsibility for company decisions by acknowledging that not everything is within your personal control. Let's delve into each of these skills. Listening isn't as easy as you might think. You need to block out everything else swirling around your head and really focus on what is being said. Eye contact helps convey a sincere interest in what they have to say, and be sure to never interrupt. As you listen, try to make connections between what is said, and then at an appropriate time, ask any clarifying questions to show that you really want to understand what they are sharing. Check for understanding by saying, "Let me tell you what I heard you say to see if I got it right." And then repeat what they shared in a way that incorporates how they feel about what was shared. Were they upset, frustrated, passionate? The emotion attached to their comments assigns a certain level of importance. Some employees aren't outwardly emotional about anything, so you may have to ask, is that something that's really important to you? Along with this video, we've provided some additional resources around active listening. Taking good notes is essential so that you can summarize all the feedback without risk of missing something. Capture all key spoken items so you can reference them later when developing a stay plan. Capture the finer detail to ensure that important clues are not overlooked and to ensure that the stay plan is customized for that employee. And if possible, use pen and paper instead of a keyboard to better maintain eye contact and help convey a more genuine interest in their feedback. Probing builds trust, and as stated earlier, the ability to build trust is an important leadership trait for improving engagement and retention. The absence of probing sends the message that the manager is just checking the box and doesn't really care. Great probing sometimes leads to fresh discovery for both the employee and their leader. And always use open-ended questions such as, "Can you give me an example?" or "Tell me more." Probing may possibly be the most essential of the 4 skills because this is where you really find out what's important to the employee. And the mere fact that you're trying to get that information sends the message that you really want them on your team. Let's look at an example of a manager asking probing questions. In this example, the manager sensed that the employee was unhappy, so he decided to lead off with the stay interview question number 4. When was the last time you thought about leaving, and what prompted it? Let's listen. When was the last time you thought about leaving our team, Abigail, and what prompted it?
I'm just so busy, I can't possibly get all of my work done, and it stresses me out. I want to do a great job, but I carry the stress with me all the time, even at home.
I'm really sorry to hear that, Abigail. That's definitely not good. What would you say are the specific work assignments that bring on the stress for you?
I really like calling on our customers and learning about their banking needs. And then my favorite part of the job is to sit at my desk with my computer to study their business so I can determine the best way to help them. I feel so good then when I have the perfect package of loans and other solutions to help them reach their business goals. I cringe when I have to present my package to the loan committee because they ask me so many questions and sometimes they turn me down.
What would you say is the worst part of getting turned down by the loan committee?
I feel like I've let my customer down and I haven't done my job. It's no fun when being grilled in front of my peers.
Yeah, I can see where all those things would make you feel bad. What part would you say is the worst? Is it letting your customers down or being grilled, as you say, by your peers?
It's the grilling part. I go into the meeting thinking I'm fully prepared, but I'm not, and then I leave embarrassed.
Well, it sounds to me that the worst part of all is feeling embarrassed. Would you agree with that?
Sure it is. How would you like it if the people you work with every day told you that you were wrong?
Okay, the employee, Abigail, said that she had considered leaving because she was overworked. A less skilled manager might have assumed that Abigail had too much on her plate and began to probe into things that he could remove, or maybe asked her if she was putting in enough hours. Instead, his probing helped Abigail realize that her stress was from doing certain tasks that made her uncomfortable, not because she was overworked. And Abigail should fully buy into her stay plan because she just heard herself identify the problem. The manager's effective probing to get beyond Abigail's initial summary statement led to a more targeted and effective stay plan, which will include learning to be more prepared for her meetings with the loan committee and growing a little thicker skin. So never stop with broad-based concerns. Peel the onion back to find more information that leads to real solutions. Some employees are going to have concerns about the company's strategy and other company decisions. And as I said earlier, employees will generally follow their manager's lead. So if managers don't support company decisions, neither will their employees. And no company can reach peak engagement, retention, and productivity if managers doubt the company's direction. Here's some sample statements that managers should be comfortable with, or a close facsimile. The executives who made these decisions have more facts and a broader understanding of the situation. And we didn't get to make this decision, but we get to decide how to make it work in our department. Now, these are just two possible examples of what might be an appropriate response to an employee's concern. But the point is that managers need to support and take responsibility for company decisions. To recap, the 4-state interview skills include listening, which includes focusing all of your attention on the employee, maintaining eye contact, nodding your head, and not interrupting. Connect the dots between things you hear to identify their real opinions. Checking for understanding by asking clarifying questions or simply restating what you've written down. And restating the emotion in a way that shows you understand how they feel. Taking notes, which includes capturing all key spoken items, including finer detail, and using paper and pen instead of a keyboard, which allows better eye contact. Probing, which includes getting beyond summary statements to get to the bottom of concerns or aspirations, and using open-ended questions such as, can you give me an example? And the last skill is taking responsibility for company decisions. Remember, employees will usually follow your lead, so you need to model the behavior, and if you express doubt around the company's decisions, engagement and retention will take a hit. There's 9 key facets of state interview preparation. While they don't have to be developed in this order, they're all important for ensuring a successful outcome. Plan, enter with a clean slate, devise questions to ask, have resources at your fingertips, overcome fears and defensiveness, invite, sequence, and schedule the meetings, choose a location and seating, gather your equipment, and visualize success. Let's look at each of these. Having a plan involves thinking about what you know or think you know is important to your employees as unique individuals. Give this lots of thought and reflect on what they've said in the past, what you may have deduced, and what you know about them personally. All of the resulting information may become central to your conversation with them during the interview. But be careful about making assumptions. Be prepared for some surprising concerns or recommendations, and be flexible. Try not to give a no response until you've let the idea be more fully fleshed out. Better yet, let them discover within the time frame of the interview why the idea isn't viable or practical by asking rhetorical questions or adding facts that they may not be aware of. And before the interview, think about how you might help prevent the meeting from becoming centered around work performance. These aren't your standard one-on-one meetings that should focus on progress towards meeting goals. We said that you need to think about the things that you believe or know are important to them. Build a simple spreadsheet and then place those things in the column entitled Important to Them.
Then in the My Beliefs column, include anything that you might want to suggest to them, such as job skill improvement opportunities or anything else based on something you have seen in them. You should do this for every member on your team. In this example, Rodriguez has told you that he'd like a mentor and more exposure to senior leaders. And based on your observations, you're going to suggest that he take a leader level communication class to prepare him for greater responsibilities and a potential leadership role. The next step in preparation is enter the meeting with a clean slate. Don't come to the meeting with an agenda, because this is their time. Instead, come to the meeting ready for employees to tell you what you need to find out. And don't be tempted to redirect their conversation away from the topic that they've broached. Listening intently will help you learn what's important to them. Have your questions ready. Questions should be precisely worded and open-ended to help the employee open their mind. The SI5 questions, along with probing questions, should provide all of the information that you'll need. And as more information comes your way, use additional probes to help pinpoint the best solutions. Familiarize yourself with all of the programs that Spot On offers. In addition to a variety of health and welfare benefits, we offer several things that many companies don't, such as the subsidized gym membership, breakfast, a weekly catered lunch, a commuter benefit, a referral award program, and the new 401k with company match. You might also want to cite things that we are currently planning on rolling out, such as the annual performance review process. All these things are designed to enhance the employee experience and drive retention, and they're great resources to be able to cite during your interviews. Many of these resources may figure into the My Beliefs column on your spreadsheet. And remember, you can also get creative and look into developing or recommending something that the company might not offer today, such as an outside learning opportunity specific for that employee. Be prepared for criticism aimed towards you or the company, and don't become defensive. Think about how you would respond to any negative feedback and about your management style. Nothing builds trust faster than responding to negative feedback with an open mind. If you do receive some negative feedback, don't be tempted to try and resolve the concern right then and there. Instead, thank the employee for their feedback and let them know that you'd like to hear other people's opinions so that you can develop a more rounded response. To overcome defensiveness, you have to manage your ego and thank the employee for their transparency and always be sure to follow up within a reasonable time frame. When you're ready to announce the initiative, consider notifying everyone at the same time during a team meeting and then start scheduling the meetings. 30 minutes is an ideal length because it forces you and the employee to follow the process and stay on track, but some meetings could last up to an hour. When you schedule the meetings, ask your employees to be prepared to discuss one or two things that they feel are impacting or could impact their desire to stay at Spot On. Your first interview should be with an employee that you think will be relatively easy so that you can get used to the process. As simple of a process as you may think this is, they can go off the rails if you're not fully prepared, and an easy employee will help you practice those 4 skills. If you have new employees, schedule those first. The risk of turnover is greatest during an employee's first 6 months, so ideally, you should meet with them at 60 days and then again at 120 days. Everyone should have a minimum of 1 interview every year. Here are some bulleted points that you can use when announcing the stay interviews. Again, we recommend announcing the initiative to your entire team at the same time. I will be conducting a stay interview with each of you over the next few weeks. Stay interviews are distinct from typical one-on-one meetings because they focus squarely on what I can do personally to improve upon your experience at Spot On. The interview should last about 30 to 45 minutes, and I'll send each of you an invitation sometime over the next few weeks. Please plan on bringing 1 to 2 topics with you to our meeting, things that impact your desire to stay at Spot On. The interview location has been proven to make a difference. You want to select a location where employees feel comfortable and that's conducive to getting honest and open feedback. If you meet in an office, move your chair to the front of the desk to help reduce the feeling of subordination, which may hinder honest feedback. Be sure to mute your cell phone and set your office phone to busy. And whenever possible, choose a neutral or off-site location, such as a nearby coffee shop. Gather your equipment.
We said paper and pen are preferable over a keyboard due to eye contact, but use what you're most comfortable with. Take your spreadsheet with you, but try to memorize the content so that it's more personal when you're conveying it. And of course, the SI5 questions, as well as recommended opening and closing scripts, which we'll cover here in a minute. And finally, visualize success. If you've done all of the aforementioned preparation, you should have a successful stay interview. Success is measured by receiving enough qualitative feedback from your employee to develop an effective stay plan. To recap, plan by thinking about what's important to your employees as unique individuals. Enter with a clean slate, with no agenda of your own, and an open mind as to what may come out of the meeting. Devise questions to ask. The SI5 should be your gold standard. Have resources at your fingertips. Be in the know before you walk into the meeting. Overcome fears and defensiveness, because you may receive some criticism about your leadership style or the support that you provide. Invite, sequence, and schedule. Announce the stay interview process during a team meeting and then start scheduling them beginning with your newest employees or the ones you believe will be the easiest. Choose a location and seating and try to pick a more neutral location or setting where employees are more apt to loosen up and provide more meaningful information. Gather your equipment, your lists, questions, and scripts, and visualize success, an effective stay interview that results in an effective stay plan. Okay, so now you're in the interview. When it comes to managing the exchange or conversation between you and the employee, there's 3 key elements. First, you need to open the meeting in a way that sets the stage, and we'll show you a recommended opening line to start the conversation. Second, you need to ask as many probing questions as necessary to develop a stay plan that will help facilitate greater engagement and retention. The SI5 are just the conversation starters. And third, there are 5 general types of employees, and each type will drive the discussion a little differently. The intent of understanding employee types isn't to stereotype or label in a negative way, but to help you think about how to prepare for the interview. So it goes without saying that you never want to tell any of your employees which type you think they are, because they could misunderstand your intent. Opening lines are designed to achieve 3 things. They should state the purpose of the meeting, set realistic expectations, and help ensure that anything you say can't be construed as a legally binding contract, such as, "You'll have a job here as long as you want," or "I promise to promote you by this time next year." Here's a recommended opening line. My primary interest in our time today is to learn what I personally can do to make this a great place for you to work. So based on our meeting, I hope we will work together here for a long time and you're fully engaged in your work. As you know, there are policies that I don't have the authority to change, such as pay and benefits. But I still want you to tell me what's important to you, regardless of whether I can change it. But I'm going to be listening especially for things that I can do something about. This recommended opening accomplishes the 3 objectives. It states the purpose for the meeting, which is to improve employee experience. It helps set real expectations on the onset. The manager can't fix everything. And while the manager said that she hopes that they'll work together for a long time, she didn't make any promises related to employment or anything else at this point. The next element of managing the exchange is probe deeply and solve completely. Whereas the SI5 questions each introduce a new topic, the probing questions help get to the bottom of their concerns or aspirations. Ideally, the employee will discover for themselves what they really want or what may be the root cause of their concerns. Think of every possible solution, including those that might require you to challenge company policy or precedent. Just be careful how you do that, because employees will only support what you support. And as you can imagine, not every solution will be perfect, and some will be disappointing to the employee. As mentioned earlier, the type of employee will likely determine the questions that you ask and the solutions that are developed. An interview with an employee who is satisfied and steady may result in a stay plan with no other objective than to help maintain the status quo. Or it could result in the employee's self-discovery that they want something more.
The mystery employee is likely a newer employee and you really don't know much about their aspirations. Low performers are likely struggling, but you still have confidence that they could be successful. One state interview can make the difference because it instills hope in them that you still have a vested interest in their success and that they can achieve the success with just a little more focus. Employees with ambition overload generally self-assess a little too high, and you need to bring them back to earth while still focusing on enhanced engagement and retention. And last, high performers are generally your A players that would have the biggest impact on your business if they left. They may demand more support in removing roadblocks that impede their success, but if you give them lots of rope, they'll generally climb it. Just be prepared for a longer list of things that they want from you as well. Here's a few important points to help you manage the exchange. Some employees want nothing more from their manager, and that's okay. Employees often don't know how to articulate their concerns, so be patient and persistent until you get the information that you need. Both of you will hear employee responses for the first time, and those new discoveries come from asking good probing questions. Some employees have more ambition than commitment, and that should be addressed during the interview. Make it clear that they have to demonstrate a willingness and commitment in their current role before you can support them pursuing a new role. As mentioned earlier, one state interview meeting can convert a low performer to a good one because they realize that you still care about their success. And sometimes, if you haven't already discovered this, you have to work with strong egos. All right, let's look at a scenario involving a high-performing employee. Tanya, your quality control manager, is the gem of your team. She's a high performer that you see as your successor, and her continued growth and retention are essential to your chances for promotion. You've been a little on edge preparing for Tanya's state interview because her communication style is direct. Your experience is that many high performers handle themselves in this way, and you need to be ready for what she brings. You decide to lead off with SI question number 5. Now let's listen to how her supervisor managed the exchange during the interview.
Tanya, what can I do to make your experience at work better for you?
Well, you know how seriously I take quality, and I have some concerns about some of the supervisors' quality scores. I'm in charge of overall service quality, but the supervisors report to you, so I don't feel like I have real control. I like to see them assume more accountability for the individual results.
Can you give me an example of how the supervisors aren't held accountable?
Well, we both know that Harvey's team performs the worst. I provided a great number of resources and dedicated support to Harvey, but I don't see where he's trying to leverage any of it. When the executive sees the quality reports, I imagine that they're wondering, what am I doing since I'm the quality control manager?
So let me tell you what I heard to see if I got it right. You want me to hold the supervisors accountable for their quality numbers and for utilizing the resources that you provided.
Yes, that's pretty much it.
Well, we're in agreement on accountability, and I've already taken some actions. I can't share what those actions are with you because they're confidential, but I'd like you to continue to bring this issue to my attention if there isn't significant improvement real soon. Do you think it would be beneficial if you also had some more tools to help the supervisors see the importance of using your quality resources?
Yes, it couldn't hurt. Do you have any suggestions?
Yes, there's an online course on communicating to influence that I think would be especially useful.
That sounds great.
Okay, please reach out to Human Resources and get that going. When do you think you can have that completed?
How about 2 weeks?
That sounds good. I'll be anxious to see what you think of the course.
In this example, the manager restated what the employee said to ensure understanding, asked for examples to further illustrate her concerns, and offered recommendations for better monitoring quality scores. And then he offered a resource for influencing managers to use for quality resources. Developing state plans. Before you walk out of the state interview, you need to agree on 2 or 3 objectives for the state plan and clearly articulate the actions that you and the employee will take. That will be the core of the state plan, tailored to that individual employee. List the deadlines for all action items and then follow up as soon as possible after the interview by sending the written plan to the employee. Keep these key points in mind as you're developing the plan. State plans are developed collaboratively with the employee and culminate from information that you received during the interview. You should present your ideas first, but they lose effectiveness if you don't get your employees' input as well. Gain employee buy-in by including specific activities that each of you will do and when. And remember, the interview began building or strengthening trust, and the right state plan will take it up another notch. The right state plan is customized for the specific employee. It's never a one-size-fits-all. State plans account for the employee's individual strengths and weaknesses, how they learn, and how they perform at their best. Developing state plans may require 2 to 3 meetings, and sometimes your answer must be no. Not all requests are possible or even reasonable. Let's go back to the interview with Tanya to see how her manager proposes solutions based on the information that she provided. Let's listen.
Tell me, Tanya, well, I know that quality is very important to you. How important is it that you aren't viewed as being responsible for some of the supervisor's low quality numbers?
To be honest, that is very concerning to me because I don't interact with executives often, and I don't know if their opinion of me is based solely on the quality reports.
Then let me suggest that I let the executives know that you've done a great job of providing resources to the supervisors that would enable them to perform at the highest quality, and that you're not responsible for those lower performing quality scores. How does that sound?
I'd really appreciate that.
Great. I'll send them an email within the next 3 days, and then I'll reiterate that at our next leadership meeting in 2 weeks.
So based on the conversation with Tanya, here are 2 state plan objectives. Number 1, Tanya will complete communicating to influence within the next 2 weeks. And number 2, the manager will notify the senior leadership team via email within 3 days and in person in 2 weeks that Tanya has done a great job and is not responsible for each manager's quality scores. Note that the key dates associated with each action item were included. During the state interview, Tanya also expressed her expectation that her manager take action against those managers with low quality. The manager also knows that Tanya will feel more involved if she reminds him of those with substandard scores when she distributes the monthly quality reports. Let's listen to how her manager responded to that expectation.
Tanya, would you feel more effective in your job if each month you delivered the quality report to me and highlighted those managers who scored below our standard? Be assured I read the report each month, and I also do follow up on those who missed the standard. But I'm wondering if that extra step might be good for you and for me.
Yes, I'd be agreeable to that.
Based on this last part of the conversation, a third objective was developed. On the 5th business day of each month, Tanya will highlight in the report those managers who fell short. Here's the complete state plan. All of the objectives indicate who is responsible and when they will be accomplished. Here are some recommendations to close the state interview effectively. Thank the employee for discussing why they stay at the company. Recap the discussion using key summary statements from your notes. State what the action plan will include, including responsibilities and due dates. And tell the employee that you will email them the state plan as soon as possible. Here is a recommended final statement or closing statement. I hope we work together for a long time. If for any reason, whether about me, the organization, or your home life, you would consider leaving the company, can I have your commitment that you would tell me first so that I can try to resolve your problem? Predicting retention and engagement risk is one outcome of conducting state interviews. The focus of forecasting retention risk should be on moving not engaged employees to engaged. Lack of follow-up after state interviews may actually negatively impact engagement and retention. So use the retention risk assessment tool that we'll look at next to help you quantify retention risk and take targeted actions to help mitigate that risk. The retention risk assessment tool is really easy to use and surprisingly objective. It allows you to take what you know or suspect about each employee and quantify the risk of defection based on 4 key categories of risk. Those categories include critical skills or specialized knowledge that is heavily relied upon and not common among your team. Secondly, the cost and time to replace the employee. Third, the business relationship risk. That is to say, the impact that their departure would have on business relationships that are critical to your mission. And fourth, any signs of potential job change that you may have picked up on, such as being targeted by recruiters, spending any time on a job board, or even unsubstantiated rumors. Then you assign a score for each of those categories where 5 is high and 1 is low. There is no 0 score because every employee has at least some risk associated with each category. And finally, you develop an action plan for those with the highest scores. And I suggest looking at those with a score of 14 and above. Here's some examples of how you might rate your employees in each category. Consider this hypothetical situation. You have a Salesforce administrator that took 6 months to find, and she's been here for about a year now. How would you rank her in critical skills or special knowledge? 4, maybe 5? How would you rank her in replacement effort? Remember, it took 6 months to find her. I'd probably give her a 4, if not a 5. What about business relationship? Well, that depends on how closely she worked with her clients. How about signs of potential job change? My guess, based on the availability and demand of that talent, regardless of what you may know about that specific risk category, is that it should be rated high. She's got to be receiving solicitations from recruiters on a regular basis. So in all, I'd probably assign a risk score of 14 or higher, and I'd ensure that she is one of the first employees that I conducted a state interview with. So use this tool for the entire team, and then work with human resources to develop a values-based retention strategy. Along with the link to this training, we sent you a copy of the risk assessment spreadsheet with the formula built in, as well as some information on developing a values-based retention strategy. Okay, next steps. The state interview process works best when it's top-down, so it's important that you are interviewed by your leader first on down the line. To ensure that this information is fresh when you conduct your meetings, we recommend that you schedule the interviews as soon as possible, but no later than 30 days out from today. And remember, state interviews aren't performance-focused one-on-one meetings to discuss goal progress, attendance, or anything else like that. They focus on what the employee wants to talk about as it relates to their willingness to remain on your team and stay engaged. When you announce the process to the team, ensure that they bring a minimum of one thing that they want to discuss as it relates to the employee experience. Be clear that the meeting isn't about job performance. This concludes the leader training on conducting an effective state interview. Please feel free to reach out to Human Resources with any questions about the process, and thank you for your valuable time today, as well as your commitment to employee engagement and retention.